Hello, my name is Gavin Merrick. I'm 37 years old, a senior legal advisor for an environmental technology company in Portland, Oregon, a city where the rain falls like endless whispers, where oak-lined streets and old cafes always carry the scent of damp wood and roasted coffee. Portland isn't just where I live, it's where I grew up, where I was once a rebellious kid ready to throw punches to settle any score, where I learned to become a man through my own mistakes. But this story doesn't begin in the sleek glass office where I now work or during the afternoon strolling along the Willamette River with Rachel, my fiancé. No, it starts in the muddy alleys of Portland, when I was a 15-year-old kid with messy hair, a torn shirt at the elbow, and a heart full of fiery anger. I was never a good kid. From a young age, I was my parents' nightmare. My father, Ronald Merrick, was a construction engineer, always busy with projects in the suburbs. My mother, Janice, worked at an insurance company, often leaving early and coming home late. Our house was in a modest neighborhood with weathered gray wooden homes, front yards overrun with weeds, and old bicycles propped up on porches. My parents loved me, but they didn't have time to keep an eye on my mischief. I skipped school, hung out with the neighborhood delinquents, and got into fights with any kid who dared look at me the wrong way. I relished the rush of hot blood surging to my head when my fist connected with someone's face, loved the way my friends slapped my shoulder and called me the boss. Schoolwork? I did just enough to pass, spending the rest of my time wandering, sneaking cigarettes, and causing trouble. My parents scolded me often. "Gavin, you can't keep living like a street thug forever," my dad would yell whenever I got called to the principal's office for fighting. My mom would sigh, looking at me with disappointed eyes. "Son, I just want you to make something of yourself." I'd shrug, mumble an apology, but in my head I was already planning where I'd go with my friends that night. I didn't care about the future, didn't care who I'd become. As long as I was Gavin, the toughest kid in the neighborhood, that was enough. But there was one person I couldn't ignore. My little sister, Tessa. Tessa was 7 years younger than me, a gentle, well-behaved girl, the complete opposite of me. She had light brown, slightly curly hair, big round eyes like two sparkling gems, and a soft smile that made anyone want to protect her. Tessa was a straight-A student, always coming home with praise from her teachers. She loved drawing, singing, and had a habit of slipping candy into my pocket whenever Mom gave her snacks. "Eat it, you're bigger," she'd say, her voice serious like a little old lady. I'd laugh, pinch her nose, and pop the candy in my mouth even though I didn't care for sweets. I did it just to see her smile. Tessa was the light in my chaotic world. She was the reason I never let my delinquent friends near our house. I didn't want her to see me as a bad older brother, but Tessa was an easy target for bullies. At school, older kids often teased her for being too kind, too small. I remember one time when a girl in her class snatched Tessa's sketchbook and tore it to pieces right in front of her. Tessa just stood there, eyes red, too timid to say anything. When I found out, I stormed to the school, stood in front of that girl, and roared, "Touch my sister again and you'll regret it." I was 13, hair a mess, hands still swollen from a fight the day before, but my glare was enough to make the girl tremble and apologize. Tessa grabbed my hand, whispering, "You're the best, Gavin." And for that moment, I felt like a hero. But I wasn't always Tessa's hero. There were times I was too caught up with my friends, leaving her alone at the playground. Once, she called me, her voice trembling because some kids were bullying her. But I was busy betting with my friends over who could throw a rock the farthest. "Tessa, handle it yourself, I'm busy," I said. I heard her sobbing over the phone. In those moments, I felt like the worst person, but I didn't know how to make it right. I was a rebellious kid who didn't know how to love properly. Then the tragedy struck. I was 15 and Tessa was 8. It was a rainy afternoon, the kind of relentless, bone-chilling rain typical of Portland. I was hanging out with my friends at an abandoned warehouse where we smoked and told exaggerated stories. I'd gotten into a feud with a group of delinquents from a neighboring area after a fight over territory. I didn't think much of it, just felt stronger, tougher. But I never imagined my recklessness would cost Tessa. That day, Tessa was walking home from school alone. I was supposed to pick her up, but I was too busy with my friends, forgetting my promise. When I got home, my mom ran out, her face pale with panic. "Gavin, Tessa's been attacked. She's in the hospital." My heart stopped. I ran to the hospital, not caring about the rain or my torn shoes. When I got there, I saw Tessa lying in a hospital bed, her face pale, a large bruise on her cheek and her arm bandaged. She looked at me, eyes red but tearless. "Gavin," she whispered. I was so scared. The doctor said a group of teenagers had attacked Tessa on her way home. They pushed her down, hit her, and ran off. Later, I found out it was the group of delinquents I'd clashed with. They knew Tessa was my sister and targeted her to get back at me. I sat by her bedside, holding her hand, guilt stabbing my chest like a knife. "I'm sorry, Tessa," I said, my voice choking. "I should have been there." Tessa gave a weak smile. "It's okay, Gavin. I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. That night, I sat in the hospital hallway, head bowed, tears falling onto my trembling hands. I thought about all the times I'd ignored Tessa, choosing my delinquent friends over her. I thought about her scared eyes, the bruise on her cheek, and I made a vow to myself. I would change. I would never let Tessa suffer again. From that moment, I cut ties with my delinquent friends. No more wandering dark alleys, no more throwing punches to prove my strength. I started focusing on school. It was tough at first. I'd never been a good student, and the numbers and letters in textbooks gave me headaches. But every time I wanted to give up, I thought of Tessa, of her saying, "You're the best, Gavin." I studied day and night, sought extra help from teachers, and slowly my grades improved. My parents were surprised but said nothing. For the first time in my life, they looked at me with pride. At 18, I enrolled in a university in Portland, majoring in political science because I dreamed of becoming a law student. I wasn't the smartest, but I was determined, and I knew what I wanted: a stable job, a decent life, so Tessa would never have to worry about me again. After graduating, I went to law school for 3 years. At 27, with a law degree in hand, I started working for a small law firm. By 36, I was offered a position as a senior legal advisor at an environmental tech company. I bought a small apartment near the Willamette River, living a life the 15-year-old Gavin could never have imagined. Tessa, meanwhile, grew into a beautiful, gentle woman, still carrying the kindness of her childhood. She studied graphic design and worked for a small company in downtown Portland. I was proud of her, but I always felt a sense of responsibility. I was her older brother, and though I'd changed, I was still ready to stand in front of her, as I did back then, to protect her from anyone who dared hurt her. Then Tessa met Mason. He appeared like a strange wind, handsome, successful, driving a sleek BMW. But something in his eyes made me uneasy. I'm not the type to be overly suspicious. But after years of running with delinquents in Portland, I'd learned to read people. The ones who smile the most, who speak the sweetest words, are often the most dangerous. And Mason, with his perfectly tailored suit, polished smile, and warm radio announcer voice, sent chills down my spine. The first time I met him at a family dinner at my parents' house, I noticed how he looked at Tessa, not with love, but like someone appraising their possession. He shook my hand, gripping just hard enough to seem strong, and said, "Great to meet Tessa's brother. She talks a lot about you." I smiled back, but in my head I thought, he's putting on an act. Tessa, on the other hand, was smitten. My little sister, who used to draw vibrant pictures and sing her own songs, became quieter. Her radiant smile dimmed, her once sparkling eyes often cast downward as if hiding something. I noticed the changes in small things. Tessa started wearing more conservative clothes, abandoning the colorful floral dresses she loved. She called me less, stopped talking about her passion for graphic design. Once I invited her for coffee, like the old days when we'd sit at our favorite cafe by the Willamette, but she declined, saying Mason wanted her to stay home. "He wants me to rest," she said hesitantly. I looked at her, wanting to shout that resting doesn't mean being caged, but I held back. I didn't want to push her away. I met Mason a few more times, and each time my unease grew stronger. The second time was at a bar in downtown Portland when Tessa invited me and Rachel to join them for dinner. Mason sat across from me talking about his finance job, boasting about international business trips and million-dollar deals. He talked a lot, but his eyes never left Tessa, as if monitoring her every move. At one point, when Tessa accidentally spilled her glass of water, Mason smiled, but I saw his hand grip the edge of the table, his knuckles white. I recognized that look, the restrained anger. I'd seen it in the neighborhood delinquents, the ones always looking for an excuse to lash out. I leaned toward Tessa and whispered, "You okay?" She nodded, but her forced smile didn't fool me. I tried talking to Tessa not once but several times. One afternoon, I went to her small apartment in East Portland. She was sitting on the couch, holding a magazine but not reading it. "Tessa," I said, sitting beside her, "don't you think Mason's controlling you too much? He doesn't let you wear what you like, doesn't let you see your friends. That's not love." Tessa looked at me, her eyes glistening like she was about to cry, but she shook her head. "You don't understand, Gavin. Mason loves me. He just wants what's best for me." I took her hand, my voice low. "Tessa, I've been around guys like Mason. Those kinds of guys, they don't love anyone but themselves." But Tessa pulled her hand away, stood up, and said, "Don't badmouth him. I love Mason and I'll be fine." I watched her walk away, feeling the same helplessness as when I saw her in that hospital bed years ago. What angered me more was my parents' attitude. They were completely taken with Mason. My dad, who valued appearances, bragged to the neighbors about Tessa's golden catch, a successful man who drove a BMW and knew how to talk. My mom kept urging Tessa to plan the wedding, even buying her a long dress to please Mason. When I tried to tell them about the red flags, how Mason controlled Tessa, how she was becoming more withdrawn, they brushed me off. "Gavin, you're always so suspicious," my mom said, her tone reproachful. "Mason's a decent man. Tessa's lucky to have him." My dad was blunter. "Don't meddle in your sister's business. She's grown and can handle herself." I wanted to scream that Tessa wasn't okay, but I knew arguing with them would only make things worse. They were afraid of losing face, of neighbors gossiping if Tessa broke things off with someone like Mason. Time passed and Tessa and Mason got engaged. I still remember the night my parents threw a celebration at their house. Mason stood in the living room, raising a glass of wine, delivering sweet words about Tessa and their future. The guests clapped. My parents beamed, but I stood in the corner, gripping my beer tightly. Tessa, in the white dress my mom bought, smiled next to Mason, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to rush over, pull her away from him, but I couldn't. Not because I was afraid of Mason, but because I was afraid Tessa would turn her back on me. She loved him blindly, as if he were her entire world. That night, after the party ended, I stood outside in the yard, watching Tessa and Mason get into their car. He placed his hand on her shoulder, but the way he gripped it made me shudder. I knew deep down that something was coming, like a silent storm, and I, Gavin Merrick, wouldn't stand by and watch my sister be swept away. A few weeks after the engagement party, Tessa called me on a Saturday morning, her voice soft but tinged with excitement, something I hadn't heard much since Mason entered her life. "Gavin, are you free tonight? I want to introduce you to someone." I was surprised because Tessa rarely took the initiative to invite me out these days. "Someone? Who's that?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual despite my curiosity. "Rachel, my best friend from college. She's a nurse, super sweet, and I think you'll like her." I chuckled over the phone, hearing Tessa's lively voice, reminiscent of the old days. "Tessa, are you trying to play matchmaker? I'm not exactly lacking suitors." Tessa laughed loudly, the first time in months I'd heard that clear, bright sound. "Oh, come on, big brother. Just meet Rachel, then we'll see. 7 p.m., the old cafe by the river, okay?" I agreed, Not because I was curious about Rachel, but because I wanted to see Tessa smile again. The cafe by the Willamette River was the same as ever, with its worn wooden tables, warm yellow lights, and the faint aroma of roasted coffee. I arrived early, sitting at our usual corner, flipping through an old newspaper while waiting. Tessa walked in, wearing a light blue dress, her slightly curly hair swaying in the breeze. Beside her was a petite woman with brown hair tied up in a high ponytail, bright eyes, and a gentle but lively smile. "Gavin, this is Rachel Carter," Tessa introduced, nudging the woman toward me. Rachel shook my hand, her grip light but firm. "Nice to meet you, Gavin. Tessa's told me so much about you, I thought you were a superhero." I grinned, glancing at Tessa, who was blushing. "Not a superhero, but definitely a big brother," I replied, and all three of us laughed. That evening passed faster than I expected. Rachel was friendly, intelligent, and had a sense of humor that caught me off guard. She talked about her days as a nurse, about patients who made her laugh until she cried, and about the late nights in college dorms with Tessa, painting or watching cheesy rom-coms. Tessa sat between us, her eyes lighting up as she recounted old memories, as if she'd momentarily forgotten Mason and the invisible cage he'd built around her. When Rachel went to get more coffee, Tessa winked at me. "See? I knew you'd like her." I shrugged, but deep down I knew she was right. Rachel and I started seeing each other more often after that night. At first it was group outings with Tessa, but gradually I invited Rachel for walks along the river, to movies, or just to sit at our favorite cafe talking about everything under the sun. Rachel had a way of making me feel at ease, like I could set aside my rebellious past and my worries about Tessa to live for myself. She was gentle yet resolute, always listening without judgment. Once I told her about my days running with delinquents, about the time Tessa was attacked because of my mistakes. Rachel took my hand, her eyes free of reproach. "You changed for Tessa. Not everyone can do that." Those simple, sincere words made me realize I'd fallen in love with her. Tessa was the one pushing us closer together. She kept texting, urging me to ask Rachel out, even secretly planning a picnic at Forest Park, where she prepared sandwiches and lemonade for us, then mysteriously disappeared, leaving me and Rachel alone. After 6 months of dating, I proposed to Rachel on a rainy evening right on the Hawthorne Bridge, where the city lights reflected on the river. I knelt down, holding a simple ring I'd saved up for, and said, "Rachel, you make me want to be the best version of myself. Will you marry me?" Rachel smiled, tears rolling down her cheeks, and nodded. As we embraced in the rain, I thought of Tessa, how happy she'd be to hear this news. But deep down, I knew that joy would be overshadowed by Mason's presence. Rachel, like me, noticed Tessa was slowly losing herself. One evening, as we sat in my apartment, Rachel set her coffee cup down, her voice low. "Gavin, have you noticed how much Tessa's changed? She's not the Tessa I used to know." I nodded, the unease rising again. Rachel said Tessa had been taking time off work frequently, canceling plans with friends, and constantly checking her phone as if afraid Mason might call unexpectedly. "The other day I saw a bruise on Tessa's wrist," Rachel said, her eyes darkening. "She said she bumped into a door, but Gavin, I've been a nurse. I know that bruise wasn't an accident." Her words hit like a knife. I remembered Mason's cold gaze, the way he gripped Tessa's shoulder at the engagement party. "He's hitting her, isn't he?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger. Rachel shook her head. "I'm not sure, but I'm afraid it's happening. Not just emotional control, but physical." I gripped Rachel's hand, trying to rein in my anger. "We have to do something," I said. Rachel nodded. "I've tried talking to Tessa, but she won't listen. She loves Mason, or thinks she does, but I won't give up, and I know you won't either." We decided to meet Tessa, both to share news of our engagement and to convince her to leave Mason. I hoped that with Rachel's friendship and my brotherly love, Tessa would open up. We arranged to meet Tessa at a small diner in East Portland, a quiet place without Mason. Tessa arrived late wearing a long-sleeved sweater despite the warm weather. She smiled when she saw us, but it was a strained smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hey Gavin, hey Rachel," she said, sitting across from us. Rachel took Tessa's hand, her voice gentle. "Tessa, we have good news. Gavin and I are getting married, and will you be my bridesmaid?" Tessa's eyes lit up and she hugged Rachel tightly. "Oh my gosh, really? I knew it. You two were meant for each other." I smiled, but my heart was heavy as she avoided my gaze. We talked about the wedding, about the suburban garden where we planned to hold it, about the lilac dress Tessa would wear as a bridesmaid. But then Rachel shifted the conversation, her tone cautious. "Tessa, we're concerned about you. You're not yourself anymore. Mason, he controls you too much." Tessa stiffened, pulling her hand from Rachel's. "I'm fine," she said, her voice small but firm. I couldn't hold back anymore and spoke up. "Tessa, I saw the bruise on your wrist. Don't tell me you bumped into a door. I know guys like Mason, he's not good for you." Tessa looked at me, her eyes red. "You don't understand, Gavin. Mason loves me. He's just stressed sometimes." Rachel took Tessa's hand again, her voice urgent. "Tessa, love isn't control, it isn't hurting someone. You deserve to be happy." But Tessa stood abruptly, her voice trembling. "Stop pushing me. I love Mason and I'm going to marry him. Let me live my own life." With that, she walked out, leaving Rachel and me sitting there helpless. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of Tessa with a bruise on her wrist with her sad eyes haunted me. Rachel lay beside me, whispering, "We won't give up, Gavin. Tessa's family." I nodded, but deep down I knew the storm was drawing closer. My wedding day with Rachel arrived like a perfect painting brushed with sunlight and lavender. The garden in suburban Portland we chose was truly a masterpiece of nature. Rows of old oak trees casting cool shade, clusters of pale purple flowers swaying in the breeze, and a small cobblestone path leading to a ceremony arch adorned with white silk and lanterns. About 100 guests sat on wooden chairs, smiling and whispering as Rachel walked out in a simple yet elegant wedding dress, her brown hair flowing loosely, her eyes sparkling brightly. I stood at the altar, my heart pounding, not just from happiness, but from an inexplicable sense of unease. I glanced at Tessa, our bridesmaid, standing a few steps away in her lilac dress, a faint smile on her lips, but her eyes tinged with melancholy. Tessa, my little sister, looked stunning that day. The lilac dress hugged her petite frame, her curly hair loosely braided, and she held a small bouquet of lavender standing beside Rachel like a guardian angel. But I knew she wasn't happy. I saw how she lowered her head when Mason, seated in the front row, looked at her with a cold, piercing gaze. He wore an expensive gray suit, his hair slicked back. But the way he tilted his head and gripped his chair made me shudder. I tried to focus on Rachel, on the moment we exchanged vows, but my mind kept drifting to Tessa, to the bruises she tried to hide, to the forced smile she gave me when we tried to convince her to leave Mason. The ceremony went smoothly, at least at first. Rachel and I exchanged rings, kissed under the golden sunlight amid the applause and cheers of the guests. My parents sat in the front row, Mom wiping tears, Dad nodding proudly. But I couldn't help noticing that Tessa stood slightly apart, as if trying to blend into the background. As we stepped down from the altar, I pulled Tessa into a hug. "Thank you for being here, Tessa," I whispered. She smiled, but her eyes were distant, as if she were somewhere far away. The reception began as the sun set, the garden illuminated by twinkling lantern strings. The band played soft jazz, and guests laughed, clinked glasses, and offered toasts. I held Rachel's hand and we shared our first dance under the lights, and in that moment, everything felt perfect. Rachel whispered in my ear, "You're the best husband, Gavin Merrick." I smiled, pulling her closer, but my eyes scanned the crowd, searching for Tessa. I spotted her standing in a corner of the garden near the dessert table, talking to a male colleague from her design company. He was a kind-looking guy with thick glasses, laughing and pointing at the bouquet in Tessa's hand. She smiled too, a rare, genuine smile I hadn't seen from her in a long time. But then I saw Mason approaching, his steps quick and his face hardened. He placed a hand on Tessa's shoulder, saying something I couldn't hear from a distance. Tessa's smile vanished. She lowered her head, and the colleague stepped back, awkwardly raising his hands in apology. I felt my blood boil. "Gavin," Rachel grabbed my hand, her voice a warning. "Don't do anything rash. Today's our day." I nodded, but my eyes stayed fixed on Tessa. The argument erupted faster than I expected. I was chatting with some friends when I heard Tessa's shout, not loud, but sharp enough to silence the garden for a moment. I turned and saw her and Mason standing in a corner near the vine-covered wooden fence. He was gripping her wrist tightly, his voice a low growl. "What do you think you're doing, huh? I told you not to talk to any guys." Tessa tried to pull her hand free, her voice trembling. "Mason, he's just a colleague. Don't make a scene." But Mason didn't stop. He yanked her arm hard, raised a fist, and I saw Tessa stumble, collapsing to the ground. Rachel was the first to act. She let go of my hand, ran toward Tessa, took off her jacket and draped it over Tessa's shoulders as if shielding her from the crowd's stares. "Mason, that's enough!" Rachel shouted, her voice sharp, no longer the gentle woman I knew. She pulled Tessa behind her, facing Mason head-on. "She's my fiancé," Mason snarled, stepping toward Rachel. "You have no right to interfere." I didn't wait any longer. I pushed through the crowd, my heart pounding, feeling like I was back in the moment years ago when Tessa was attacked by those delinquents. When I reached them, everything had spiraled beyond control. Tessa was on the ground, clutching her face, blood streaming from her nose, staining her pale lilac dress red. Mason loomed over her, his face flushed with rage, his fists still clenched as if ready to strike again. The guests began to murmur, some shouting, and the band stopped playing. I heard my mother's voice from a distance. "What's happening?" But I didn't care. All I saw was Tessa, my little sister, crumpled on the ground, blood flowing, her eyes filled with fear. Time seemed to slow. The sounds of the garden, laughter, clinking glasses, gentle jazz, faded away, replaced by the pounding of blood in my ears. I saw Tessa, the little girl who used to hold my hand on rainy days, who slipped candy into my pocket with a radiant smile, now sitting on the ground, blood soaking her lilac dress, her trembling hands covering her face. And standing over her was Mason, the man I never trusted, with a cold glare and a clenched fist as if he wasn't yet satisfied. The anger inside me erupted, not like a flame, but like an explosion, burning away every shred of restraint I'd tried to maintain on my wedding day. I lunged at Mason, shoving him hard away from Tessa. "What did you do to my sister?" I roared, my voice echoing through the garden, now silent as a graveyard. The guests froze, some covering their mouths, others stepping back. Mason stumbled from my push, but quickly regained his balance, standing tall, wiping Tessa's blood off his hand as if it were just a stain on his expensive suit. He looked at me, a smirk curling his lips, his eyes sharp as knives. "She deserved it," he said, his voice calm but dripping with defiance. "She dared to flirt with another guy right in front of me at your wedding. You should teach your sister some manners, Gavin." His words stabbed my chest like a blade. I looked down at Tessa, saw her try to lift her head, her lips moving as if to say something but failing. Blood still dripped from her nose, staining her dress, seeping into the ground. I turned back to Mason, feeling my blood boil. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice low but sharp as a blade. He shrugged, stepping closer, his tone still calm. "I said Tessa needs to be taught a lesson. She thinks she can do whatever she wants, but I'm her fiancé. I have the right." He pointed at Tessa, his voice rising as if addressing the crowd. "She was laughing with that colleague, flirting right in front of me. You think I'd let that slide?" The crowd whispered. I heard one of Rachel's friends murmur, "He hit Tessa just for talking to someone?" But Mason didn't care. He stepped closer, pointing at me. "And you, Gavin, you should know your place. This is between me and Tessa. You have no right to interfere." That was the final straw. I stopped thinking. Memories flooded back. The time Tessa was attacked by delinquents because of my mistakes. The time I carried her home in the rain. The time she looked at me with absolute trust. I couldn't let her suffer anymore. I swung my fist hard and precise, connecting with Mason's face. The crack rang out, sharp and dry like snapping wood. He fell back, blood spurting from his nose, staining his pristine white shirt. The crowd gasped. Some women covered their eyes, others stepped closer as if watching a gripping drama. Mason scrambled to his feet, eyes blazing, and charged at me. He landed a punch on my shoulder, but I didn't feel the pain. Adrenaline surged through me like a rushing river, my focus solely on Tessa, on protecting her. I shoved him back, landing another punch, this time to his jaw. He staggered, collapsing to the ground, but still snarled, "You'll regret this, Gavin. You dare hit me?" I stood over him, breathing heavily, fists still clenched, ready to strike again. "Touch my sister again and I'll kill you," I said, my voice cold as ice, though inside I wanted to scream from the rage pouring out. Security guards from the venue rushed in, 2 burly men grabbing my arms, pulling me away from Mason. I struggled, and it took all their strength to hold me back. "Calm down, buddy," one guard said, his voice low but firm. Mason lay on the ground, wiping blood from his face, glaring at me with pure hatred. "You'll pay for this," he muttered, but his voice was weaker, lacking the arrogance from before. My mother ran over, clutching her chest, her face pale. "Gavin, what are you doing on your wedding day?" she cried, her voice breaking. My father stood behind her, shaking his head, his eyes full of disappointment. "You've ruined everything, Gavin," he said, his voice heavy. I looked at them, at the whispering guests, at Rachel holding Tessa, and felt like the whole world was against me. But I didn't care. All I saw was Tessa, my sister, the one I'd sworn to protect since the day I carried her home in the rain. "I'm protecting my sister," I said, looking straight into my mother's eyes. "You and Dad should have been doing that with me." My words cut like a knife, making her step back, hand covering her mouth. My father opened his mouth to say something, but then fell silent, his gaze averted. I turned to Tessa. Rachel was wiping blood from her face with a handkerchief, whispering words of comfort. "Tessa," I said, "I'm sorry this happened, but I won't let him touch you again." Tessa looked at me, eyes red, but said nothing, only lowering her head. Rachel stood, signaling the band to stop completely, and called for an ambulance. "Tessa needs to be checked," she said, her voice firm but her eyes filled with worry. I nodded, a mix of helplessness and lingering anger churning inside me. The guests began to disperse, casting curious glances and whispering. Some of Rachel's friends approached, asking if Tessa was okay. All I wanted was to get Tessa out of there, away from Mason, away from the cage he'd trapped her in. The police arrived minutes later, along with the ambulance. They asked me a few questions, but I don't remember what I said. I only recall standing there, watching Tessa being loaded into the ambulance, Rachel going with her. Mason was taken away too, but I didn't care what happened to him. I knew one thing. I'd hit him not just out of anger, but for Tessa. For my sister, the one I'd promised to protect no matter the cost. My wedding day, meant to be the happiest of my life, turned into a nightmare. But if that punch was what it took to save Tessa, I wouldn't regret it. Because to me, family isn't just blood. It's the person you stand up for, even when the whole world tells you to stay silent. After the ambulance took Tessa and Mason to the hospital, the police detained me. 2 officers, one tall with a stern gaze, the other younger with a sympathetic expression, asked me to recount the events. I stood in a corner of the garden, my white shirt stained with blood, Mason's and perhaps Tessa's too, and explained everything. How I saw Tessa collapse on the ground, blood streaming from her nose. How Mason stood over her with a menacing glare, and how I couldn't contain my anger. "I was just protecting my sister," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. The younger officer took notes, nodding, while the older one asked, "Did you use excessive force, Mr. Merrick?" I looked him in the eye and replied, "If you saw your sister being beaten, what would you do?" They took me to the station for a formal statement. I sat in a small room, the cold fluorescent light overhead making me feel like a criminal. But I wasn't afraid. I could only think of Tessa, her terrified eyes, the blood staining her lilac dress. Rachel called, her voice calm but laced with worry. "Gavin, I'm at the hospital with Tessa. She has a mild concussion but no broken bones. I'll stay here until she's okay. How are you?" I gripped the phone, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm fine, Rachel. Just take care of Tessa. I'll handle this." But when I hung up, I felt lonelier than ever. My wedding day, meant to be the start of a new chapter, was now a tangled mess. After a few hours, my lawyer, an old college friend named Daniel, arrived at the station. Daniel was the quiet but sharp type, always knowing how to turn a situation around. He brought a video from the venue's security camera provided by the property owner. "You're lucky, Gavin," Daniel said, pushing up his glasses. "The camera caught everything. Mason hit Tessa first and you acted to protect her. This is defense of others. With statements from a few guests, you won't be charged." I let out a sigh of relief, but the anger still simmered inside me. "What about Mason?" I asked. Daniel shrugged. "Minor injuries, he's at the hospital. But he's making noise, threatening to sue you for assault." I scoffed. "He's suing me? After beating my sister in front of 100 people? Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice low. "Gavin, guys like Mason don't give up easily. He has money, connections. You need to be prepared." I nodded, feeling like a new battle was just beginning. I didn't just want to protect Tessa. I wanted to ensure Mason would never have the chance to hurt her, or anyone else, again. The next morning, I was released. Rachel picked me up at the station, her eyes tired but resolute. "Tessa's at my place," she said as we sat in the car. "She didn't want to go back to your parents' house, and I think that's for the best. She needs space." I nodded, squeezing Rachel's hand. "Thank you, Rachel. I don't know what I'd do without you." She smiled, but it didn't hide her worry. "We need to talk to Tessa, Gavin. She's still defending Mason, saying it was her fault. I'm afraid she's not ready to leave him." When we got to Rachel's apartment, Tessa was sitting on the couch wearing an oversized sweater, her hair loosely tied. She looked at me, her eyes still red but tearless. "Gavin," she whispered, "I'm sorry for ruining your wedding." Her words cut like a knife. I knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "Tessa, don't ever say that. It's not your fault, it's Mason's, and I'll make him pay." Tessa shook her head, her voice trembling. "He didn't mean it, he just lost control." I glanced at Rachel, seeing her clench her fists, trying to hold back her anger. "Tessa," Rachel said, her voice gentle but firm, "someone who loves you wouldn't do something so terrible. You don't deserve to be treated like this." Tessa lowered her head, silent, but I saw her shoulders tremble. In the days that followed, the story of the wedding spread across Portland, not just through guests' accounts, but also on social media. A short video, likely filmed by a guest, was posted on YouTube, showing the moment Mason struck Tessa and me tackling him. The post went viral, with comments condemning Mason and supporting me. "This brother is a hero," one user wrote. "That guy deserved it," another said. But there were dissenting voices too. Fighting at a wedding, so uncivilized. I didn't care about public opinion, but the social media pressure began to affect my parents. They called me to their house, my mother's voice on the phone tense. "Gavin, you need to explain this. The neighbors are talking. They say you turned your wedding into a brawl." When I arrived, Mom was at the dining table, eyes swollen from crying, while Dad paced, hands in his pockets. "What did you do, Gavin?" Mom asked. "Mason's a good man. Maybe Tessa did something to upset him." I clenched my fists, struggling to stay calm. "Mom, you saw the blood on Tessa's face and still call Mason a good man? I can't believe you're defending him." Dad spoke up, his voice low. "You don't understand, Gavin. If Tessa leaves Mason, what will people say? Our family will be disgraced." I looked at them, feeling like I was talking to strangers. "I don't care about disgrace," I said. "I only care about Tessa." Mason, as Daniel predicted, didn't stay quiet. He filed a lawsuit against me for assault, demanding compensation and calling for further police investigation. But I wasn't afraid. I'd learned from my rebellious days that the best way to deal with someone like Mason was to hit their weak spot. I hired a private investigator, another friend of Daniel's named Marcus, who specialized in digging up dirt on people like Mason. "Give me 2 weeks," Marcus said, his eyes sharp. "If this guy has skeletons, I'll find them." It took only 10 days for Marcus to deliver. He sat across from me in a small cafe, placing a folder on the table. "Mason's not as clean as he wants people to think," Marcus said. "He abused a former girlfriend, Vanessa, 5 years ago. She sued him, but he paid her off to settle. He's also tied to a financial fraud case at his old company, embezzling tens of thousands of dollars. And here's the best part. He signed a shady deal with a rival company to sell insider information. I have proof, emails, texts, and a statement from a former colleague." I looked at the folder, feeling like I'd just found an arsenal. "Send this to my lawyer," I said, "and make sure the press gets it." I contacted a local reporter who'd previously written about the environmental tech company I worked for. I provided the information on Mason not out of revenge but to protect Tessa. The article was published on a Portland news site with the headline, "Successful Businessman or Abuser." It detailed Mason's past, from the abuse of his ex-girlfriend to his shady financial dealings. The online community exploded. Facebook posts called Mason a hypocrite, demanding his company investigate him. The public pressure forced Mason to drop the lawsuit. He called me, his voice trembling with rage. "You think you've won, Gavin. I won't let this go." I replied, my voice ice cold. "Try it, Mason. I'm waiting." In the days following the incident at the wedding, Rachel and I devoted all our time to being with Tessa. Rachel brought Tessa to her apartment in East Portland, a cozy space adorned with abstract paintings on the walls and the scent of lavender from aromatic candles. Tessa sat on the couch clutching a pillow, her eyes vacant as if she were trying to rediscover herself. Rachel, with her gentle yet resolute nurse's instinct, had contacted a therapist she knew from her hospital days. "Tessa needs professional help," Rachel told me as we sat in the kitchen sipping coffee on a rainy morning. "It's not just physical trauma, Gavin. What Mason did has stripped away her sense of safety, her trust in herself." I nodded, but inside I felt helpless. I wanted to fix everything, to bring back the radiant girl Tessa used to be, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. "Will she agree to therapy?" I asked, my voice low with worry. Rachel placed her hand on mine, her eyes full of determination. "She agreed, but it'll take time. I'll be with her every step, and you should be too." I squeezed Rachel's hand, feeling her warmth, and for the first time I felt we weren't just a couple, but a team fighting for Tessa. The pressure from social media finally began to shift my parents' perspective. The article about Mason detailing his history of abuse and financial fraud spread across Portland. Posts continued to pop up with hundreds of comments condemning Mason and supporting me. Meanwhile, Rachel and I decided to postpone our wedding, not because we loved each other any less, but because Tessa needed us more than ever. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of Rachel's apartment, watching the rain fall over Portland's streets, she took my hand. "Gavin, I don't want a wedding while Tessa's still hurting. We'll wait until she's ready to stand by us," smiling genuinely. I pulled Rachel into my arms, feeling her warmth. "You're the most amazing person, Rachel." "I agree. Tessa is our priority." In the weeks that followed, Tessa began to show progress. The therapist said she was learning to confront her fears, to recognize that she didn't deserve the treatment Mason had inflicted on her. Rachel was by her side every day, taking her to therapy, cooking her favorite meals, and even encouraging her to draw again. One afternoon, Tessa showed me a painting she'd just finished, a field of lavender under a rainy sky with a small girl standing in the center, her hands raised as if reaching for the stars. "This is me," Tessa said, her voice soft but certain. "I want to find myself again." I hugged her, tears streaming down my cheeks. "You'll do it, Tessa. Rachel and I are always here." In the months following the wedding incident, I lived in a strange state, as if the world had both collapsed and was being rebuilt from scratch. Tessa, with Rachel's support and therapy sessions, slowly began to regain the light in her eyes. She no longer flinched when someone mentioned Mason's name or jumped at the sound of her phone ringing. But I knew the wounds Mason left behind wouldn't heal easily. They were like invisible scars, always ready to ache whenever she recalled the days of being controlled and hurt. And I, Gavin Merrick, the once rebellious kid, now had only one goal: to ensure Tessa was safe and lived the life she deserved. The legal battle with Mason entered a fierce phase. Daniel, my lawyer, worked tirelessly, using every piece of evidence Marcus, the investigator, had gathered. Shady emails, testimony from Mason's ex-girlfriend, and recordings of his abusive behavior, all were presented in court. The trial took place in a small courtroom in downtown Portland, where sunlight streamed through the windows onto worn wooden benches, creating an atmosphere both solemn and stifling. I sat in the front row holding Rachel's hand, my eyes fixed on Tessa, who sat beside the lawyer with a calm face but trembling hands. Mason appeared in a gray suit, his former arrogance gone. He kept his head down as our lawyer presented the evidence: photos of bruises on Tessa's arms, witness statements from the wedding, and his dark past. Mason's ex-girlfriend, Sarah, took the stand, her voice shaky but resolute. "He hit me not just once. He made me think it was my fault until I left." I glanced at Tessa, seeing her grip Rachel's hand tightly as if drawing strength from her best friend. When it was Mason's turn to speak, he stood, his voice low but lacking confidence. "I'm sorry for what happened. I didn't mean to hurt Tessa. I lost control." But his apology didn't quell my anger. It wasn't remorse, it was a last-ditch effort to save his crumbling reputation. The judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes, delivered the verdict: 18 months in prison for assault and defamation. As Mason was led away, he shot me a glare full of resentment. I stared back, unflinching. He could hate me for the rest of his life, but he would never come near Tessa again. After the trial, Tessa seemed to shed a heavy burden. She started talking more, laughing more, though her smiles were still hesitant. One evening, as we sat in Rachel's apartment, Tessa suddenly said, "I want to move away, Gavin. I want to start over." Surprised, I looked at her. "Move where? Will you be okay?" Tessa smiled, this time a genuine smile. "I want to study psychology in another state. I want to help people like me, people who've been abused and thought they didn't deserve love." Rachel hugged Tessa, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You're so strong, Tessa. I'm proud of you." I hugged her too, my heart aching yet relieved. "I'll always be here, Tessa, no matter where you go." Tessa chose a university in Colorado with a renowned psychology program. Rachel and I helped her prepare, from packing her belongings to finding a small apartment near the campus. On the day Tessa left Portland, I drove her to the airport. She wore a light green sweater, her hair tied up high, and carried a backpack full of sketchbooks. "Gavin," she said, hugging me tightly. "Thank you for not giving up." I held her close, tears streaming down my face. "You're my sister. I'll never give up." A few months later, Rachel and I held a private wedding, no longer in a lavish garden with hundreds of guests, but a small ceremony in Rachel's backyard decorated with wildflowers and a few wooden chairs. Only family and close friends attended. Tessa flew back from Colorado to be our honorary officiant. She wore a simple blue dress, no longer a bridesmaid, but a part of our family. As Rachel and I exchanged vows, Tessa stood beside us, her smile radiant for the first time in months. Rachel, in a simple white dress, whispered to Tessa after the ceremony, "You didn't have to be a bridesmaid this time. You're family." Tessa laughed, hugging Rachel, and I saw her eyes glisten with tears. Happy tears this time. My parents attended too, their eyes no longer heavy with judgment. After the trial, the articles, and the social media pressure, they had apologized to Tessa, admitting they were wrong to defend Mason. Mom hugged Tessa for a long time, crying as she said, "I'm sorry, my love. I didn't see what you went through." Tessa nodded, holding Mom's hand, and I knew she had forgiven them, though healing would still take time. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered like the sound of rain falling outside the window, persistent yet gentle, reminding me that everything had changed. And so had I. I, Gavin Merrick, once a rebellious kid who thought fists could solve every problem, now understood that true strength wasn't in those punches, but in the willingness to stand up for the ones you love no matter the cost. My wedding day, meant to be the happiest moment of my life, turned into a battlefield. I had punched Mason not just out of anger, but for Tessa, for the little sister who once held my hand on rainy days, who believed I was her superhero. That punch had no place at a wedding, but it was something I'd never regret. It was a declaration that I wouldn't let anyone hurt my sister, whether it was Mason or the entire world. But more than that, the journey after that punch, from the tense days in the courtroom, the sleepless nights worrying about Tessa, to the moment I saw her smile genuinely at my and Rachel's private wedding, taught me about family, courage, and forgiveness. Tessa is now in Colorado, starting a new life. She sends me photos through texts, a corner of her small dorm room with paintings on the walls, a cup of coffee from a cafe near her school, and sometimes a new drawing, vibrant lines as if she's sketching her life anew. She's studying psychology with a dream of helping others who've been abused, who've felt unworthy of love. Each time we talk, her voice is brighter, stronger, though there are still moments of silence, as if she's recalling those dark days. "Gavin," she said during a video call, "I'm learning to forgive myself. I used to think it was all my fault, but now I know I deserve to be happy." I smiled through the screen, tears streaming down my face. "You've always deserved that, Tessa. I'm proud of you." Rachel and I, after our private wedding, began building a life together. Her small apartment is now our home, filled with evenings of cooking together, watching movies, and sitting by the window, watching the rain and talking about the future. Rachel is my anchor, not just during the chaos with Mason, but in the moments I doubted myself. "You did the right thing, Gavin," she says whenever I dwell on the punch at the wedding. "You saved Tessa, and that's what matters most." Rachel isn't just my wife, she's family, the one who fought alongside me to bring Tessa back. My parents have changed too. After the trial, after the articles exposing the truth about Mason, they began to reflect on themselves. Mom calls me more often now, asking about Tessa, about us, and sometimes she cries, saying she regrets not listening to me sooner. Dad, always the stoic one, has softened too. One day when I visited, he pulled me out to the backyard where the old oak trees still stand strong through countless rainy seasons. "You did what I couldn't," he said, his voice low but sincere. "I'm proud of you, Gavin." Those words, though late, brought me relief, as if a part of the past had finally been laid to rest. Looking back, I realized that family isn't just blood, it's the people you stand up for even when the world demands your silence. I stood up for Tessa, not just with that punch at the wedding, but with every decision that followed. From hiring an investigator, taking Mason to court, to being there for her whenever she needed me. But I also learned that fighting isn't just confronting an enemy. It's patience, listening, and giving Tessa the time and space to heal. I want to tell anyone reading this story, anyone trapped in a toxic relationship or watching a loved one suffer, don't stay silent. Don't think you lack the strength to make a change. I was once a rebellious kid who thought he'd never amount to anything, but I changed for Tessa. And you can change for the ones you love too. If you see someone being controlled or abused, speak up. Seek support from friends, family, or professionals. And if you're the one suffering, remember that you deserve to be loved, respected, and safe. Don't be afraid to step out of the darkness, because there will always be someone ready to reach out and pull you up, like Rachel and I did for Tessa. Today, as I write these words, Tessa sent me a new painting. It's a portrait of the three of us, me, Rachel, and her, standing under a starry sky, hand in hand. "Family," she wrote in the corner, her handwriting soft but certain. I hung the painting in our living room above the fireplace where I can see it every day. It reminds me that, though some wounds take a lifetime to heal, family is stronger than anything, big enough to stand against injustice, powerful enough to help us be reborn in silence. I punched Mason because I'm Tessa's brother. It was instinct, a promise I kept from the day I carried her home in the rain. But more than that, it was a declaration that I would always stand up for her, for family, even if the world demanded my silence. And if you ask me whether I'd do it again, the answer will always be, yes, I would, without hesitation.